Much of my research revolves around the design of institutions. So institutions are simply the way we get things done. These are the patterns of behavior that we've established, to reproduce society, raise children, organize activities, etc. An important area of institutional life concerns the delivery of goods and services. And here's the problem that my colleagues and I are dealing with, the research that we're doing. And it's the fact that the modes of description by which we classify these institutional designs are too lean. In other words, our typologies come up short vis-à-vis the richness of real institutional life in the real world. And so this is a problem for us. So institutions, they're either state-based, state-centered, or market-based, or communitarian, etc. But these typologies are just kind of a simplistic classification scheme, and it kind of makes for a rigorous description system. So take the example of water management in China. China is, right now, evolving in institutional reforms that are important. And the thing about it is we presume, most assume that it's an evolution from a state-centered system of administrating water to a market-based one. So they're developing a tiered system just like we have in Singapore or the US, where the upper tier corresponds to the marginal cost or benefit of delivering water. And we just presume, well, it's tending towards they're going to be like us. So this is a problem because, somebody from California may go over to China and say, look, they're tiered systems just like ours. But what if it isn't? What if it's evolving into something altogether unique? And so we have to have ways of describing more richly what it is that's evolving. So an example is when I first got to Singapore, I got introduced to chicken rice, and you just assume, well, chicken rice is chicken rice. It doesn't matter where you go to this food stall or the fancy hotel, it's all the same, and but that's up until you experience bad chicken rice, and then it's not all the same. And so you develop a fine enough palate, and this one is different from that one is different from, well, it's the same with institutions. This is the topic of a forthcoming book that I'm writing up with some colleagues, and the title of which is A Phenomenology of Institutions: Comparative Perspectives on China and Beyond. And the book is simply saying, look, we have to treat institutions as they are, to the thing that is, Husserl might say. And we try to develop new modes of describing institutional designs. And it requires going beyond the established typologies. So as an example, if we look at China, leaders will say, or the party will say, we have now a socialist market system. It sounds like it's all been figured out, but really, what is a socialist market system? Well, we're not sure because it's being worked out as we speak. And right now, there is ongoing an important era of institutional experimentation, and as we point out in this book, innovation going on in China, and we don't want to miss it. So, for example, the questions we ask should be a little different. Rather than say, they're evolving a system of tiered water rates, just like we do have. We should ask instead, how is their system different from the conventional? Same thing with other areas of institutional life, rural property reform. Rather than just assume, well, they're evolving a system of private property rights, we now ask, the system that they're evolving, how is it different from both the state ownership or private property rights? And how do we describe those hybrid in-between systems? As another example, getting to a more specific area of institutional design, there are systems of ownership that are evolving around resource management in China that involve ownership and management that is joint and several. And so if you look at the conventional typology, there's a matrix of institutional designs: public, private, community-based, club goods. Well, we have to actually add entries to that matrix. And so what are these types of goods that are not private, not public, they're not common ownership, but they involve overlapping sometimes nested, but not always, but complementary modes of ownership and governance of the resource, involving the central state, local authorities, but also private parties, community residents. How do you classify them? Well, this is the topic of our book. So I would just say stay tuned to the IWP site as we start to publish more of this and post the forthcoming publications on this.